Welcome to what is the first session on the subject of identity. This series is normally best taught face-to-face in an environment where we can, ask questions and respond to things and process stuff through together. Unfortunately, we're not able to do that because as I speak now, we're still on lockdown, and whilst that might get easier, the opportunities for us to come together might not exist for some while yet. So here I am trying to video these things in an attempt to help you to grapple with this subject. So our subject is identity, and it's always a good place to start with a definition of what that actually means, what that covers. So let me read you something. I'm thankful for my daughter Ruth for putting me on to this. Erik Erikson, 1968, defines identity as a subjective feeling of sameness and continuity over time. It is a sense that you are being the same person in different places and different social situations. This person is recognized by others in terms of their attitudes and behavior as a continuity of character develops. Therefore, once identity is formed, it is reasonably predictable, and we can expect a person to behave the same way with the same reactions and character traits in different situations. My identity is the very core of who I am, and everything flows from this. So identity is the kind of the central part of who we are. It has to do with character and personality, the way we think, the way we behave, the things that are important to us, and that our views, opinions, all of those things, the way that we perceive the world, the way that we respond to the world, the way that we manage and shape our lives, the things that we do and the things that we don't do, all come out of our sense of identity. And our goal is to get a right sense of identity and to discover who we are, and some foundational stuff in that. Some of that will be the same for all of us, and then there will be other things that will be unique to us, which kind of build on top of that. But the objective is to discover our true identity so that it sets us free to be everything that we can be. Now, for me, of course, and those of you who know me will know this, the whole idea of identity for me finds its foundation in God, in who God created me to be, in my relationship with him, in the way that he shaped me and the life that he has planned for me, the things that he wants me to engage with, where he wants me to be productive and fruitful, the things that I shouldn't do because he's not built me for that. Understanding all of these things for me forms the foundation of identity. And as I begin to understand that and live in that, then the kind of persistence in that brings a consistency to me, and I am the same everywhere. And all of these good things that God has done in my life can come out in any environment because I understand who I am and who I'm supposed to be, and that all then starts to work out, I think, reasonably naturally if we've got that kind of set in our spirit and in our psyche. Erikson suggests consistency is one of the fundamentals of identity, that actually if I am in my true identity, it should be consistent and it should be the same everywhere, that it's recognizable, measurable. So if I were to ask those of you who know me to write down 3 things to describe me, I'm fairly confident that a lot of the same things would turn up, because you all know who I am. You all understand something, at least, about my identity. And if we are different people in different places, then that's going to create all sorts of crises in our lives and make life difficult for us. If we understand our identity, then we become, in a sense, predictable, because people know what to expect from us, what we are, how we are going to respond, what our opinions will be like, where we are likely to want to go and be and do, and all of those things, because our identity is consistent and is understood, and all of these things are at the very core of us. And I, of course, want to suggest that those things at the core of us are the things that God has shaped in us, that God has created us for. And later on in this series, we'll be taking a look at Psalm 139, which talks about the way we are created and that God has shaped us for something. We'll also be having a look in Ephesians at the way that God has created the church, that he has formed the church to be the place where we can best grow and grow safely and grow fully into what he created us to be. And we're going to take a little bit of a journey into that so that we can see all of the things that will help us with this sense of identity. Of course, cognizance, understanding is quite key here, because if we don't understand ourselves, then we're kind of not going to make any progress. We need to understand where we're at now, our kind of starting place, in order to know what to work on to get to where we need to be. And I do want to kind of reinforce that idea that actually identity is something that can change. We can become different people. Your identity is not carved in stone. And I believe that God has for each one of us a destiny that he is aiming us towards, and that the shaping of our identity helps us in that journey. And indeed, the journey is part of the shaping, if you understand where I'm going there. But we need to understand ourselves and understand the way identity works in order to be able to make progress and develop something bigger and better within ourselves. And that can sometimes be difficult. It can be difficult because, and here's the thing, we don't know what we don't know. So I know what I do know. I know things about myself which I understand, and I know that's who I am and how I am, but I don't necessarily know the things that I don't know. There might be things about me that haven't emerged yet. There might be things about me that emerge occasionally and I don't really understand. I don't know where it comes from. I don't know how that happens. And so as we get into the whole area of identity, we need to get to that place where we understand as much as we can and acknowledge that there are some things perhaps we don't understand, but over the course of this journey, those things will probably emerge and we can start to think about them and deal with them. So we're all on the road to find out. We'll be at different stages along that road, but the objective of this course is to take us further along it and engage at a deeper level. Let me read you this. This is something that Simon Sinek wrote. We make decisions based on what we think we know. It wasn't too long ago that the majority of people believed the world was flat. This perceived truth impacted behaviour. During this period, there was very little exploration. People feared that if they travelled too far, they might fall off the edge of the earth. So for the most part, they stayed put. It wasn't until that minor detail was revealed, that the world is round, that behaviours changed on a massive scale. And that's true. And that's so true for us, that we too often believe things that we have been told about ourselves that actually are kind of flat earth, is flat earth thinking. That actually we have taken stuff on board that inhibits us. We have listened to voices that we have trusted sometimes, and sometimes we've just listened because they were so loud and in our face. And sometimes we've listened to those voices because other people have said we should listen to those voices. And those things have settled in us and kind of become a part of who we are, but have led us to this kind of flat earth thinking. And so we don't venture out into things that we might venture out into. And for many of us, there'll be a whole world of experience and life out there that we haven't engaged with because our sense of identity is flat earth. And one of our objectives in this is to discover that actually there is a whole world. It's not flat at all. There is a whole world there for you to engage with. There is a whole world for you to experience and enjoy and discover for yourself that God has made for you, and a path and a journey that God has got you on that is all designed to take you into becoming everything that he created you to be. So we want to kind of get away from the things that we currently think and be a little bit more observant of those things and question those things, so that we can dispense with stuff that isn't true and get to the place where we're working with stuff that is true. And this is quite a job for us because we all suffer from something which is called confirmation bias. Now, confirmation bias means we basically are prone to believing things that reinforce a view that we already hold. So, if, for instance, if I believe that Manchester United are the best football team in the world, and that is a firmly held belief for me, I will believe without question every bit of information that I receive, everything that is told to me that reinforces that view. So whenever I hear something good and positive about Manchester United, I am going to believe it, okay? Because I already believe they're the best team in the world. And if anybody says anything negative to me about it, I want proof. I want them to actually make a proper argument. And even when they've done that, I'm actually not really going to believe it, because I believe that Manchester United are the best football team in the world. So we are all like that if we have a view that we already hold quite strongly, then a view that comes in that agrees with that, we will take that straight on board. We will add that in as evidence. We will consider that a part of the picture without questioning it. But if something comes along that disagrees with our view, we will instinctively discard that. We will instinctively discard solid evidence because we don't want to hear it, because it conflicts with our strongly held view. And we must be careful with that, because each of us will hold views very strongly, some of which will actually be not quite right, will not be helpful, will not take us in the right direction, are not what God intended for us. And so we have to decide, if we're going to make this journey together, that we are going to actually listen to what is said, to take stuff on board and start to listen and evaluate more responsibly the stuff that we hear. So, for instance, at some point in this series, I am going to suggest that the only place you can really discover who you are is in the church. That actually God forming the church was part of his plan to help us to become everything that he created us to be. Now, I'm aware that some of us will be frustrated with church. I understand that. I'm aware that there are those who are listening who might have been damaged, abused, upset, offended by church. I understand that. But those things do not distract or do not undermine the fact that God has created the church to be the place where you and I grow and discover more about who we are. Because we're supposed to do this together. We're supposed to do this in fellowship. And the church is the place where we are best placed to hear from God and receive from God and to grow together into all that he has for us. So whilst you might have had some difficulties there, you need to stop receiving all that reinforcing information that puts you off engaging with church and actually reevaluate and understand some of the biblical facts about church and try to engage. And listen, I know it's dangerous to say this, but it may mean you moving churches to find a place where you can actually grow and become what God wants you to be. It might mean that, but you must not allow faulty information or bad experience to put you off from getting into a place where you can discover genuinely who you are and grow into everything that God created you to be. So confirmation bias, important that you register that one, and that as we look through what the Bible has to teach us about these things, that you lay aside the information that you're currently dealing with and be prepared to hear something new, be prepared to hear something different so that you can get to a better place. And to kind of round off this first session, I want just to sow a few seeds of thought about how this whole thing works. Our objective is to build radical disciples of Christ, because I think the Bible, and we will look at this, I think the Bible teaches quite clearly that that's what we're all called to. We're all called to be radical followers of Jesus. And in that whole area of radicalization, we need to understand what gets us to that place. Now, radicalization really is a word, when we talk about radicals, it's very often used in negative context these days, because it's usually used about terrorists and religion in a bad way, in a negative way, in ways that we hear the word and we don't want anything to do with it. But to be radical means that it's different, that it's committed, that it's focused, that it's prepared to kind of go further and do more. And in that sense, we want to engage with that and become radical followers of Jesus. But I use that word particularly because I came across some interesting information recently from the Barclay Center in the States, and a very gifted lady, Jocelyn Cesari, who has been studying with a team. They're studying radicalization in the context of trying to de-radicalize people who have been radicalized in a negative way, the sort of ways I was just talking about. But here is something, let me read this to you. It is important to bear in mind that religion is not only belief, but also belonging and behaving. That is why de-radicalization programs that focused on changing beliefs usually are not successful. Most radical groups do not focus on belief, but rather tend to accentuate the belonging and behaving dimensions of religion. In other words, we are not primarily shaped by what we believe. And in fact, quite often, the belief element actually lags behind the belonging and behaving. And in terms of radicalizing people in the bad sense of the word, in the terms of the radicalization that we would like to see disappear from the face of the earth, people are drawn into that, first of all, because of a sense of belonging. I belong here. I am a part of this. There is something going on here that I hook into that helps me to feel like I'm a part of something, that helps me to feel like I have a family here, that helps me to, be at home, that helps me to just feel like there is some purpose to who I am and what I'm doing. And that sense of belonging kind of engenders all of those things. Secondly, the whole thing about behaving, that actually when people become a part of something, they then start to imitate behavior. So, if you become a part of the church, and the church for you feels like family, the church for you feel at home, and this helps you, it gives you a sense of belonging and a sense of purpose. If the church does that for you, then the next logical step, progression in that, is the whole thing about behaving. You've experienced belonging. Now it's about behaving, that you start to imitate the people that you see there who exemplify this family, who exemplify this purpose, and you start to do the things that they do, go to the places that they go, do the things that they do, speak how they speak. And then on top of that is the whole thing about believing, that actually then the whole belief thing starts to kick in through that as you engage with the behavior, that you then start to believe, that belief starts to grow, that a theology, if you like, starts to become evident, and you start to use that to form your thinking and form your expectations and your focus and everything else. That all of that starts to grow out of, first of all, the belonging, then the behaving, and then the believing is kind of like the cherry on the cake. And so it's very important to think about how you are going to do all of that. When I did these sessions over in Spalding, at Lighthouse Church in Spalding, they, without knowing what I was going to talk about, put the Grow Academy logo up on the screen, and next to it was kind of like a small heap of soil with a little plant growing out of it and a flower on top. And it was perfect, because the whole issue that I'm describing here is one of being planted. And read Psalm 1. The tree that is planted by the waterside is good for all sorts of things. Why? Because it's planted, and it's planted in the right place. And so to me, and I think this is true for all of us, the church is the place where we should be planted if we're going to grow. If there's going to be some growth, and if there's going to be some blossoming, that we need that fellowship, we need that place to belong, to feel at home. We need that family around us, that as we engage with that, then the next thing is the whole behavior thing, that actually, that as we become a part of that family, as we engage properly with that, if it's just a Sunday morning thing, you're probably not going to get the full benefit of this. But if we engage with that properly, then there will be some learning behaviors. There will be what the Bible describes as discipleship, and we'll get into that in one of the sessions, that there will be some discipling, that there will be some learned behaviors, there will be stuff that we will imitate in others because we see that it's good, and we see that it's helpful, and we see that it moves us forward. And as we are engaging in that journey, in that process, we will learn things that will help us to develop a theology and an understanding that will sew that all together, and we will be able to intelligently and purposefully move forward in discovering and developing our identity and becoming everything that God has called us to be. So this is where I'm going to leave it for this session, but I want you to see that identity is important. I want you to see that identity will be what shapes your life, and that your identity can be shaped, and that God has a plan for you, and a plan to do you good, and a plan to shape your life so that you can become everything he created you to be. And in that process, we've got to learn to disregard some of the things that we've said. We don't want that flat earth thing going on where we believe stuff just because somebody we trust said it to us, but actually we need to discover that the world is big and it's round, and that we have a part to play in this. We have a purpose in this. There is something bigger in life for us. That will require us to do battle with some of the beliefs and things that we have held onto quite strongly, that as new information comes in, we can't afford just to discard it. We have to evaluate it properly and listen to it and take some stuff on board, so that we come to a place where we're properly engaging with the people of God, with the purposes of God, and with the plan of God for our lives, for my life, and that we do that together in the context of the church, which is God's vehicle for all of that to happen. So I hope that has been thought-provoking for you. I hope that has been challenging for you. And please, if you have questions, obviously get in touch, and we can take a look at those. And please, if you are part of the Haven group that is listening to this, we will be going to Facebook Live straight afterwards, so that you can start asking questions and things then. So please join us for that. But thank you for tuning into this, and look forward to seeing you next time.